'Tis the season of goodwill and generosity, and boy, oh boy, was the Premier League in a giving mood today, despite the limited number of games due to COVID. The Etihad Stadium bore witness to the highest-scoring boxing game of all time. The Saints overcame the Hammers in a 5-goal thriller, and the North London clubs filled their stockings with convincing shutout wins. I'm Heath Pearce. That's Jimmy Conrad. The Qué Golazo Boxing Day recap begins right now. What is going on, everyone? If you're watching this live on YouTube, I can't emphasize this enough. Smash that like button. Also, we want to hear from you, so get in the comment sections. Get stuff off your chest. Yell at Jimmy. Yell at myself. Tell us what you had. Tell us where you're at. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you got for Christmas if you want to. We'll throw the best comments on the screen, and we'll keep this thing going. And then some of you are listening to this in podcast form. That's so nice of you. You know what's even nicer? Subscribing to this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from. And leave a glowing review, leave a rating, give us 5 stars, or whatever you're feeling at that moment. And you can do it now while you listen. So we appreciate all of you. And by the way, while we're recording this, Brighton hosts Brentford. But as the intro mentioned, while COVID restricted the number of games, we retreated to a gluttony of goals in the day's other 5 games, 26 to be exact. So Jimmy Conrad, what is going on, man? How are you?
I am excited. I saw goals on goals on goals today. They are the gifts that keep on giving. I'm excited to get into this. Unless you support one of the teams I got there. Assist slap today. Just slapped around Heath Pearce.
Hey, I didn't get my team didn't get their ass
No, I
around.
know. I wasn't just saying. I was just saying. I was speaking generally.
I just want to point out that there are a few teams that were not able to play on Boxing Day, and there were a few teams that were not invited to play on Boxing Day, Jimmy. And I don't know which one is worse, but either way, we talked about this, Jimmy, for a while, right? How important Boxing Day is to the Premier League just because of the fact that they own a day of the year, right? It's their Super Bowl. It's the year where the entire world is paying attention. And yes, you have some Turkish league, you have the Championship, you have some other small leagues, the Scottish Premier League obviously going as well. But this is the one where the biggest league in the world owns that day, and you can see the value of that because of the results that took place. I mean, where should we even start, Jimmy? Actually, let's start with we'll go from end to beginning. Let's start with the Aston Villa versus Chelsea. Now, Jimmy, I don't know if you remember my predictions when everybody was sort of calling me a coward, and I was calling myself a coward for taking the favorites on all of these matches. But it turns out not a bad day overall. Stevie G wasn't at the match. He was in isolation due to COVID. Leeds Villa postponed due to outbreak in the squad. Pulisic was at the number 9, Jimmy. What did you think of that? Obviously, I'll give my takes after this, but what was your initial take of Pulisic at the number 9?
Well, it's something they're continuing to try, at least until Romelu Lukaku comes back and is healthy right from the get-go. He came on as a second-half super sub for Trevoh Chalobah, which I think really changed the game. And what's interesting about Lukaku going back in is that forced Christian Pulisic to play the right wing-back position. So we basically have Pulisic not playing in his best position for Chelsea, and that gets a little frustrating at times. I will state for the record, it is kind of weird that they wear Borussia Dortmund colors. When Thomas Tuchel used to coach them, that always throws me off a little bit. But different topic for another time. With regard to Pulisic, obviously he's at his best when he can pick up the ball and run at players, and it's going to be a little bit harder for him to do that as a 9, or at least a false 9, trying to pick up the spots. Where is he going to create those numerical advantages? Yes, at times he can stretch the defense, and I know this kind of plays into more of a U.S. men's national team conversation. But if he can't pick up the ball at times and run at players, it's going to be hard for him, I think, to even enjoy what he's doing out there. And in some weird way, him going back to the right wing-back position allowed him to do that. I don't know if he enjoyed it per se, because he's got to defend a little bit more than I'm sure he wants to. But it's interesting times for Christian Pulisic. I don't know if he's found a home so much under Thomas Tuchel as to what his best spot is. What is his best role? Is he a super sub? Is he a starter? It's I don't know what the future is. What do you think about him? I mean, the future seems a little murky, I'd say, they value him clearly, but if you're not going to play him in his best spot and have that type of success that he's already proven to have while wearing the number 10 shirt for Chelsea, I don't know. It's interesting times for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where you're like, okay, you could see him filling in the role here and there. I think being a role player within a team is always dangerous. I remember being told that I was that for one of my teams when I was playing, and I was offended by it because I was like, okay, on one hand, that's great because you're going to get a lot of games that way. But on the other hand, you're like, oh, I think they're using this in a derogatory term where it's like, you're so good at so many positions, we don't know where to put you. So we're going to put you on the bench and then bring you into one of those positions. And so, look, at the number 9 spot, I think it's not his best position, especially in the way that they were having to try to break down Villa at certain times today. it didn't seem like he got involved for long portions. And like you said, he's best when he's on the ball all the time and running at defenders. I actually liked him at wing back, and I've never really considered him as a wing back because of his lack of defending. But if you watch the way that he pressed when he was the 9 versus the way that he was pressing in the wing back position, he actually looked comfortable pressing in the wing back position. Whereas at the 9, he sometimes he just looks like he's a step late. It's kind of a half press. And in a team that needs to press really well together, he sometimes seemed like he was one of the ones letting the team down in terms of their pressing shape at the number 9. And by the way, happy holidays, Natalie. We appreciate you joining us as always. But when he was at the wingback position, I liked it, even though Natalie clearly doesn't. I didn't mind him there because his energy seemed high in the press, higher than, again, when he was up at the number 9 position. And he's facing the field, which is where you want him. You want him facing the field, advancing the ball forward. Although the deeper he drops, the more nervous I get when he's on the ball. But overall, I thought it wasn't a bad performance. But to shift back to Chelsea in general, were you impressed with this team? When I saw Lukaku came in, obviously, it's just like when Lukaku joined the team. You go, well, what is this team missing? And you go, oh, they're missing Lukaku as soon as he's on the field, right? And then he's off the field again. They're looking for answers, and you see him back on the field. He scores. But just his impact, and not just his impact on scoring goals, but I'm talking more about his impact and just freeing up other players on the field. As soon as he occupies those center backs, as soon as he's occupying space, it just gives so much freedom to other players around them. I thought Kovacic was also a really, really bright spot in terms of his willingness to advance the ball forward. Doesn't help Pulisic's chances of getting more time, but I just thought overall Chelsea just looked completely different than they have without Lukaku. Obviously, he's coming on. His role is increasing in terms of his minutes, but I don't know. What was your take overall for Chelsea in this one?
Yeah, with regard to Lukaku, I mean, his addition to the team was the biggest reason why I picked Chelsea to win the Premier League. He was, for me, the missing link to them to have that success over a long period of time. And he started off really well, then obviously got hurt or wasn't scoring prior to getting hurt, then got hurt, and now he's back. I feel like you saw a version of him today. You're like, that's why we signed the guy. That's exactly the difference that he makes up there, to the points that you make, that he occupies so many different players. Plus, when you look at his replacements, because they got rid of Giroud, because they got rid of Tammy Abraham, they don't necessarily have a big guy up top that can just bang and battle with those center backs and make it difficult. And when they put up a Pulisic, when they maybe put up a Mount or a Havertz or a Timo Werner, or you can name a whole bunch of guys, Ziyech, all these guys.
None of them would have made a Villa struggle whatsoever. But as soon as Lukaku came in, they started to worry. They started to struggle. They started to have to foul. They got frustrated. The game changed for them.
No, but when you put Lukaku next to any of those guys I just mentioned, and one of them is a grown-ass man, and the rest of them look like boys, and that's the difference. You have a grown-ass man who's up top, and that I'm kind of sad that Jorginho took the penalty at the end that Romelu Lukaku earned all by himself by outrunning two players, earning the penalty, and Jorginho should have been like, you know what, buddy? This one's all you. Because I think he needs, even though he scored 15 minutes after coming on with a header, which was a very nice glancing header, and that alone is another reason why that makes Chelsea more dangerous, right? You don't always have to whip a ball hard and low on the ground because you have these little guys up top. You got a guy that can get on the end of things, can create that space, can get on the end of headers. And so there's a lot of different reasons that having Lukaku makes the team a little bit more dynamic. But he just has that physical presence. Obviously, his feet continue to get better and better. His composure in the box has just been light years of where it was even a couple of years ago with Manchester United. Going to Inter Milan was a great decision from him, learning from Antonio Conte, who's obviously starting to, we'll get into Spurs in a second, but elevating the performances of some of the players there as well. And I think that's changed his career. And now they just got to continue to tap into that, because sometimes when he's not as confident, he starts to fall back into those other things. And I don't know why I'm bringing Ricardo Pepi into this conversation, but what I think Lukaku has also done really well at over the last 3 or 4 years as he's matured and evolved as a player is that even if he's not scoring, he's still trying to do the little things, draw the fouls, get on the end of crosses, occupy players that create space for other players, making those thankless runs, pressing very hard, tracking things down, like 50-50 balls that are in the back. I mean, that's essentially a target, the defender for West Ham. He had the edge on Lukaku, but he times his run well, he bodies him out, and all of a sudden that leads to a penalty, and that ices the game for Chelsea. I mean, those little things are going to matter if they really want to be title contenders.
Jimmy, I'm looking at Villa, and just to give a quick word on them, I'm on Who Scored looking at their run of form, and it's like Christmas lights. Green, red, green, red, green, red. Literally going back to their win against Crystal Palace. I mean, what do you think this means for them? Obviously, they've had some postpones before. They have a postponing after against the upcoming match against Leeds on the 28th has been postponed. They play against Brentford after that. But then they've got United, and then they've got United, and then they got United in the FA Cup, and then they got United again in the league, and then they've got Everton. And so, what is it for them that you think needs to turn around? Because honestly, they didn't look like they looked competitive against Chelsea for large parts until Lukaku came in. And when Lukaku came in, the whole game changed in terms of their dynamic, their ability to make adjustments to neutralize Chelsea. What did you see from Villa, and was there anything alarming to you in terms of their upcoming schedule?
I would just say this really quick. I'll be a Villa apologist just because Luis Miguel Echegaray isn't here. Since Stevie G's taken over, they've won all the games that they should win, and they've essentially lost the games that they should have lost. They've lost to Man City, and they were competitive in that one, to your point, Heath Pearce, 2-1. They lost to Liverpool 1-0, maybe a ref call either way, maybe get them a draw on that. And then they lose to a Chelsea team that when Lukaku played did make a big difference.
Wasn't this the argument, Jimmy? Wasn't this the argument that, Luis talked about this, right? Obviously a Villa fan. LME said that, they did well. They created chances. They had opportunities to get points out of those games. But isn't the real test for Villa then to be able to get points against these top 4, top 6 teams? This was, again, it seemed like there was moments there where you're like, okay, there might be something in it for them, going up 1 on an own goal. Reece James flicks it, unfortunately. But they were still good in the run of play. It wasn't like it was a lucky against the run of play type of goal opportunity. But then it just seemed like they didn't have the answers later on in the match.
Yeah, only 1 shot on goal for Villa. So I guess that gives me a little bit of concern that once Chelsea regain kind of control and put their Chelsea stamp on things, especially under Tuchel, that just going to make life very difficult. Sure, if you're going to score, we're going to make you earn it and tire you out. And they were fortunate. Even when that ball came in and Reece James scored off the own goal, when the ball got whipped in, there was 1 player, I think, from Villa in the box, maybe 2. And there was 5 or 6 or 7 Chelsea players. And it just was unfortunate. Chelsea are very committed, I think, especially after having a bad run on that side of the ball over the last, month, let's say 5 weeks, of giving a lot of goals, shipping a lot of goals. Villa, for me, I wasn't expecting them. I think I was, even our preview, I thought maybe a draw here. I thought there was enough there from Villa, especially at home, to give us something. But I thought when Lukaku came on, it just changed the game, and it really changed the dynamic of everything. And that was a really good sub by Tuchel. I think one of the knocks on Lampard at times was his in-game management. Ole Gunnar, another not very good at in-game management. Tuchel will make a bold call at times. He doesn't get it right always, but there are times where he gets it right, and today was that day. And it must be nice to have a Lukaku to come off the bench. But with regard to Villa, I think they were a little unfortunate because they had that schedule where they played Norwich away, and then they were supposed to play Burnley. That would have given you probably at home, that would probably give you a little bit of momentum, right? Feeling confident going into this Chelsea game. Instead, that Burnley game gets postponed. Now you're waiting a little bit, a week. No, it looks like that. 12 days before you play your next game. So I don't know. I feel for Villa a little bit, but I still don't think they're a team that can maybe take points off of the top 4 regularly. So I'm not too surprised that this is how it played out.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, the only last point that I would say for Chelsea was just I really enjoyed watching Kovacic when he came on. He was another spark that I really liked. Driving the ball forward the way that he does just brings a different dynamic to the team. Just that willingness to engage with Lukaku and push teams forward. It just allows, what it's like. When you have a player that can drive, Jimmy, the defense is able to move up. The game gets a little bit more predictable around you, knowing that you have somebody that can advance the lines on the dribble a little bit. But let's move on to a record-breaking match, Jimmy, from one team desperately in need of a working number 9 to Manchester City, who don't need a working number 9. They don't need number 9 at all. They don't need anything, it seems like, right now. Winning 6-3 over Leicester. Ferran Torres is in Barcelona right now, by the way, Jimmy. And if you haven't been on the Twitter sphere the last few minutes, he's in Barcelona with his team. And he's ready to make that move or seal that move. I think it's a 5-year deal or something like that. And a good deal for Manchester City, who don't seem to be in a hurry to replace him, don't seem to be in a hurry to replace anybody right now or fill any sort of slots. What were your main takeaways from this City game? And how much do you consider them favorites to win the Premier League at this point?
I think they're heavy favorites. They were so good in this particular game. Ferran Torres maybe didn't pan out the way that they wanted to when he came in. I just feel like they have an excess of those types of players in their team. So the fact that they're like, We lost who? What's his name again? Ferran Torres. We still scored 6 goals, and against Leicester is ridiculous. And if you watch the first half of this game, and if you're a City supporter, their in, back, and through is so ridiculous. They're off the ball running, their third person running, whatever you want to use to define it, is so good. And they're always looking for it. And it's so hard. You've been out there before on the field where if you have a team that's that locked in on how they're supposed to play and always moving and always wanting the ball, you can't defend it for 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. Now, Leicester didn't do themselves any favors. Tielemans decided to give up 2 penalties. Rightfully, those were 2 penalties. And
by the way, do you think they were both like clear penalties?
Yeah, I think they were. And it's unfortunate as defenders who've defended a lot of times in corners, getting into tussles and throwing people down. I might have done that a few times. They just didn't have VAR to hold me accountable. So I get it. And what's interesting about set pieces in this game in particular is that City was up 4-0 after 30 minutes. Completely took their foot off the pedal, whatever metaphor we want to use. Mm-hmm. James Maddison, I thought, was excellent. Iheanacho was excellent. And they got back into it as 4-3. And even Pep Guardiola said after the game that there might have been an equalizer there for Leicester. I mean, that's how poor City were defensively and just got real casual.
I love when Pep Guardiola says like stuff like that after a 6-3 win.
Yeah, of course. But what's crazy is that with 4-3, the way that City win the game are on 2 set pieces, which feels so un-City-like for them to go and like kind of just a rugged physical way to win the game when they're so pretty more often than not. So I just thought that was an interesting contradiction, excuse me. And I do think there's some vulnerabilities in the team. Now, Pep Guardiola came out and also said that Ruben Diaz was 1 card away from getting suspended and he didn't want to miss the Brentford game. I'm like, what? Dude, that's why that's the game you want to miss, dude. Who cares about Brentford, So I thought that was interesting. And, I don't think Laporte is still the first choice guy, even though he scored. I think the pairing of Stones and Diaz is the right way forward. But there's still, we saw it too in the Champions League when they went 6-3 with RB Leipzig. There's still something there. I know they haven't given up that many goals this season. They've already scored 50, which is crazy. They're unstoppable right now. Yeah. Ultimately, to answer your question, I'd be really hard pressed to say that they're not the favorites. I mean, Liverpool, I think, are very, very close as well, but they have to deal with Africa Cup of Nations and everything that goes in there. I still think Chelsea's a little bit off of it unless Lukaku is healthy the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the table right here, you've obviously got Man City sitting on top, and clearly, I mean, the thing about Man City that was shocking to me is the way they approached this game was like they were trying to find an equalizer in stoppage time from the first minute. Like they're passing their movement, the chances they were creating. And don't get me wrong, on the flip side, Leicester squandered a lot of what I would consider half chances, top of the box. Madison was hitting everything over the bar. They were just looking for that square. They would get down into the box and they'd hit that square pass, and then someone would hit it first time. And there just wasn't that clinical nature of it that could have changed the game earlier on for them. But just to watch City, the passing, the weight of the pass, the movement, the timing of everything, and the way that they were attacking from the very start, it was insane. Like City was first, sitting on just their pressing lines continuously changed, trying to figure out what do you do with this Man City side, and they were just too good from the very, very start. And so on the flip side, again, like you said, Leicester City were able to come back, and now you're looking at the table. It's a year for Leicester where you're like, man, what could have been, but also are they sort of normalizing a little bit? And the way City are playing right now, it's just not one single player, right? Again, we joked about it before in the preview, like the luxury of being able to say, Phil Foden, nah, Jack Grealish, you guys have had a night on the town. We're just going to not play you. Well, everybody's begging just to get to 11 players. Just shows you the depth of the squad and the quality that they have and the dynamic. And they're all just completely different styles of players that somehow fit into this mold. And that's primarily because they play with this false nine setup where Kevin De Bruyne can roam and you have a Phil Foden who can roam and you have just so much quality on the pitch that it's impossible to stop on their day. And any of you that are just now tuning in or listening to this, we appreciate all of you. Make sure you comment, make sure you like, subscribe so you get these first thing or you're able to join us live whenever we do these shows live. Again, we appreciate all of you, especially this time of year in the holidays when we're being thankful, a little more emotional than usual, perhaps emotional in our critiques of these matches as well. Jimmy, any final thoughts from this Manchester City Leicester game?
I would just say that in fairness to Leicester City, they were without Johnny Evans. Wilfred Ndidi, who usually sits in front of the back four, was not available for this. Soyuncu was out. So they're missing some of their starting center backs. Obviously, Fofana getting hurt very early on, I think really derailed their defense right from the get-go because he was going to be the guy. You got James Justin was another player. I know they got Luke Thomas out wide left, but James Justin was really emerging last season. Pereira was out. So I think we could argue that maybe all four of their guys that started in the back line last season weren't even in this game. And Wilfred Ndidi, who's arguably one of the best CDMs in all of the Premier League. And I love that Man City, to your point, just said, let's just go pressure the shit out of these guys and let's just see what they can handle. And they just couldn't handle anything. And Tielemans didn't, shower himself in glory with giving up 2 penalties, which
would you rather have Jamie Vardy or Evans, Johnny Evans on the pitch? Well, I mean, which do you think could have been more impactful?
Well, today I don't think they needed. Well, Jamie Vardy would have helped, I guess, in some capacity. I thought Iheanacho was pretty good. So was James Madison and Lookman. Lookman scored a very good goal. Yeah, Iheanacho had a goal and 2 assists, and they were busy. They were close to potentially getting a 4-4 result, but they just couldn't hang on. And unfortunately, set pieces is kind of what undone Leicester in this one. I don't think City are completely invincible. I think there is some cracks there, but can you expose those cracks? That's the biggest thing. And it's almost like they challenge you. Oh, you think you can break us, huh? Well, you can't, but if you do, we'll still score 6 or whatever. So it's interesting. This is an interesting City team that has a different vibe than maybe City's teams in the past.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing that I would say about Leicester is I thought Yannick Vestergaard would be a little bit bigger or better than he is. I mean, he's a big body, he's a big frame. I appreciate that, but he's not Soyuncu when he's on the field, and he is a Dane like you, Jimmy, with a gigantic head and his thighs rubbed together when he runs. But I thought that he could maybe step to the level. I mean, again, when you talk about like Norwich and some of these teams that are kind of elevator teams that you expect to go down, you see a little bit more of these players that just seem a step slow for the Premier League, and he was one that I just wish or hope he can still kind of round into a form that makes him challenged to be a starter in this team regularly, or at least lift the level of that back line when they're depleted like the way that they are now.
One last thing on that. It's just, this is a real test for Brendan Rodgers. He gets a lot of, and deserved respect and admiration for what he's accomplished with Leicester City, obviously winning the FA Cup last season for the first time in their 137-year history, and almost getting into the top 4 a couple seasons in a row. I mean, he's getting a lot out of this group of players, but right now he's really up against it. And I think it's going to be a nice challenge for him to say, okay, we got to push this result aside and continue to look forward. They're currently in 9th on 22 points. That's 13 points behind Arsenal for 4th. So they have a lot of work to do if they want to really get back into contention for Europe.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking at this top 4, obviously we're going to get to Arsenal, we're going to get to Spurs, both of them sitting 4 and 5 in the league right now, jumping West Ham, Manchester United. Obviously, it's really hard to look at the table right now because if you look at the matches played, there's such a discrepancy between Arsenal and Spurs, Arsenal and Man United, Chelsea and Man United. I mean, you're talking about a range of 16 games to 19 games right now. With Liverpool up there sitting in second place just on 18 matches as well. But Leicester down there on 17 obviously have some games to make up as well, and perhaps some ability to make up some ground there. But you're right, it's definitely going to be a hard challenge this is probably the biggest challenge for Brendan Rodgers in terms of now being a little bit more under the gun or under the pressure. And then looking down at the very bottom, Jimmy, there's a lot of teams haven't played a lot of matches. Burnley, I don't know if they're still in the Premier League 15 matches. They haven't played in a very long time. And then Norwich. Actually, we're going to take a quick break, Jimmy. And when we get back, we're going to talk about Arsenal and the other matches from today. But if you're listening to this on audio, we will be right back. If you're watching this live with us, stay right here. All right, Jimmy, we are back in a flash, just as we promise every single time. We deliver on that 100% of the time. North London, Jimmy, is back. No one thought we'd say this decade or anytime soon, but teams are on quite a run. Let's start with the Arsenal match, winning 5-0 over Norwich from the start. Norwich just look outmatched. And again, I don't know what to think of them. The manager obviously seems to think that they have an opportunity, that they've gotten better somehow or some way. But here they are just getting an absolute beating from Arsenal, who 5 straight wins in all competitions, and the Gunners' biggest away win since 2009. Did you get a chance to watch this one?
Yes, I saw a good portion of it, or at least to the point where I knew who was in control and who was going to win, which means I basically just watched the first, 10 minutes and I knew exactly what was going to go down. Very good performance from Arsenal. What I love about watching them play right now is it looks like they're enjoying themselves. I know that sounds kind of, well, nice analysis, but there is that element of confidence, and confidence matters. And it's one of those things where maybe if we looked at Arsenal 2 or 3 months ago, or even last season, something doesn't go right on the field and their heads go down. Everybody's heads go, and they're like, they're unsure of themselves. If they make that same mistake this season, or at least in this current run, they're like, hey, we got it. Next play. You know what I mean? They're already moving on. It's so subtle and so nuanced, but you can tell they believe in each other. And you wonder if there's some Aubameyang twist to this, that with Aubameyang not in the picture, and it seems like the team's looking to move forward without him, it feels like they've come alive in a way, and oddly, because I feel like Aubameyang is pretty beloved from what I've read behind the scenes. They really like him. He's just not a leader per se. He's not captain material, but they love him as a person. So I wonder, but it seems like the team's flowing a lot better. Lacazette's been very lively. Saka, obviously, tremendous today, creating goals by himself. I do have a lot of questions of Norwich and their defending in general. But when you have a team like Norwich whose backs are against the wall, who are unsure of themselves right now, the first thing that you need to do is you got to score early. You got to make them, you got to put that seed of doubt that they've got absolutely no chance in this game, and that this game is going to go a lot like the other games that they've been playing, and where they just don't play very well. They don't really have an identity. They're not creating their own luck. And I think Arsenal have done a lot of that in a lot of different ways. And I'm really impressed with Arsenal. I've got nothing but positive things to say about how they performed. Smith Rowe came off the bench and scored, so they have a little bit of depth there. Tomiyasu didn't play today, but they still got the clean sheet against a team that can score. They're not going to maybe win, but they can hurt you at times. And I thought Arsenal were very complete on both sides of the ball. So I'm here to applaud Arsenal, baby. Let's get after it. I don't do this very often. So everybody just soak it up.
I don't think anybody does it very often, Jimmy, but when we do it together. It's a community event when we celebrate Arsenal. But look, Arsenal are one that I think Arteta is continuing to show his evolution as a leader. And Arteta was one to back Aubameyang for a brand new big contract, right? And to be the guy. And now for him to be able to cut ties. And we see a lot of this in the Premier League where there are a few players that are guaranteed starters when they're fit and healthy. And Aubameyang's numbers were a guaranteed starter when fit and healthy 2 seasons ago. And now you kind of say, well, Jimmy, you can always have one of these guys that maybe breaks the rules and gets away with it. That star player. And if that star player is not delivering, well, now you got to make some hard decisions. And again, I know he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a lot of fun. I know the young players have him, but there's a thin line of that being liked and not delivering on the field and being a big flashy guy and now breaking the rules and now trying to, you start to develop this culture of like, oh, this guy's allowed to be above the law, but he's showing up when he wants. And I think Arteta did a good job of being able to change that the team is responding. It is a very young team in terms of experience, in terms of the vulnerability of these players of being influenced by somebody who perhaps isn't the right leader, like you said. Probably a good friend, probably a good guy to hang out with, probably a good guy to grab a beer with 7 nights a week, but probably not the leader you want for some of your players that you're trying to shape and mold into being stars. Speaking of young players that are being shaped and molded, Fabrizio Romano called the Norwegian Odegaard the best under-the-radar transfer of 2021. And I want to get your take on Odegaard because for me, even looking at him during his loan spell, right? His loan spell was 14 games, 1 goal, 2 assists. And I looked at him and I go, it's a little bit of a luxury player when you watch him, right? And that inefficiency and he's almost like a false 10 in terms of like doesn't have that final product, is good at controlling the flow of the game, but how much of that is luxury versus actual function? Does he have the ability to kind of turn that into bigger numbers and more consistent numbers? Obviously this year, that was with 14 games. This year, he's done 17 games, 4 goals, 3 assists. And just more clinical. He has all those pieces of being able to control the flow of the game, read the game, combine, triangulate, do all the things that he does really well. But now he's starting to have a little more of a final product. Do you think that he's an underrated transfer? Because obviously everybody knows him. They know what he was supposed to be. They know what he might not end up being in terms of the potential that was placed on him as a teenager. What's your take on Odegaard so far in the season?
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about him. 4 goals and 3 assists so far in the Premier League, I believe in 17 games. He did have a stretch there where he had 3 goals in 3 state games, starting in early December where he scored against United, unfortunately a 3-2 loss, against Everton and a 2-1 loss, and then against Southampton in a 3-0 win. I think to your point, this is a kid who signed with Real Madrid at 15, 16 or whatever it was. The hype has been unreal for him for a very long time. And he's gone gone out on loan. Excuse me. Yeah, I can't speak today. Gone out on loan. And I feel like, where is his identity? Who is he supposed to be playing for? Is it the club he's on loan for? Or is he trying to actually play that's more similar to his parent club, which was Real Madrid for a very long time? And now, even when he was with Arsenal last season, he had to know deep down, well, I'm only going to be here 6 months, man. Like, this is kind of how it works for me. I'm here for a little bit. I make friends with everybody and then I leave. But now when they made this deal permanent, I think it changes your commitment to the team in a way where he can pick his spots, I guess. And we've seen that, because what I love about his game is he's a connector, right? He's that connective tissue that we talk about a lot, Heath, where even if he's not influencing the game with stats, he's still influencing the game with maybe getting the ball to Saka 10 yards higher up the field. And we know, you and I both know that getting that ball 10 yards higher up the field makes a difference.
But my problem, my issue with him as a player, to jump in on that thought, was that he was always stuck between at Madrid, even stuck between a Modric and a Toni Kroos. Like, you don't do this super good and you don't do that super good. Mm-hmm. You're stuck in between, where it's like, yeah, like you said, on any day that connective tissue is unbelievable. But it's kind of the Weston McKennie role, where it's like, well, you're not unbelievable defensively, and we think that you can be really good attacking wise, but can you consistently have a final product that when you get your chance to put it in front of the box or put it in front of the goal, you can set somebody up? When you get a chance to score, can you score consistently? And that's the thing that I'm seeing a little bit more of this year than when he was on loan, which was just like, oh my gosh, he's so fun to watch, because he's just got that like tiki-taki rhythm of just sort of almost a Riquelme type of just knowing where the game is all the time and kind of being able to just feed it almost like a metronome of sorts. But missing that final product. Sorry to jump in on your point.
No, I think that's a great point. And I also think, because how Arsenal are set up with the double pivot with Partey and Lokonga, or Partey and Xhaka, it allows Odegaard to maybe pick those spots. And because you have Martinelli, who's in fine form right now, and Saka on the other side, or Smith Rowe, these guys are hungry to get the ball and run, right? Those players want to run. Martinelli maybe not as much, but he likes to find those pockets as well. And if Lacazette's playing well, then there's those spaces that I think Odegaard is getting better at. They just seem like they're flowing right now. There's definitely a rhythm to the team. And obviously it's always nice to have Norwich to to really express yourself and find that rhythm without too much trouble. But I like Odegaard's game a lot. In terms of underrated transfers, to get to your point back to Fabrizio, I almost like Tomiyasu slightly better than Odegaard. So if we throw Tomiyasu in there, who's a tremendous right back, who just does his job and does it well. When you have a lot of those players, and I love that you say this, Heath, and I've stolen it plenty of times, but if you have a lot of players that are 7 and 8s out of 10 every single game, Tomiyasu is one of those. You can count on him to be the same. And Tierney had a good game today. If Tierney can be a 7 or 8 there, and you got Ben White and Gabriel, Ramsdale and goal, and I just feel like Arsenal is definitely trending in the right direction. And I think Tomiyasu will be, for me, is a little bit more of an underrated transfer. But Odegaard should be in that conversation. And when you got Arsenal making those types of signings, that's what they used to do. And now it feels like they're getting back to that a little bit. And they don't have to go splash the cash for all these players all the time.
I agree. And again, I think there is a certain level of credit to the consistency that this team has, like you said, whether it's White, Tierney and whatever, or Ramsdale, for example. I think that back line is just showing another level of consistency that I think is super important in terms of just lifting their game. Or Tomiyasu, like you said, there's just so many tools now at their disposal that you're starting to find more and more consistency out of this team. But Ramsdale's the other one where I'm like, Arsenal, whenever I get my hopes up, it's always somewhere down the spine where we ultimately get let down. Xhaka was one that's consistently let me down for years in terms of somebody that I expect to be just another level higher in terms of consistency as a leader within the team, and then ultimately lets us down with red cards or rash challenges or just has a shocker of a performance. But Ramsdale's one where I don't know. I can't say enough about just.
There's another one, though, that's a 7 or 8 every single game. Yeah. And there's something about that consistency. Tomiyasu, Ben White, once he got healthy and started to partner with Gabriel, awesome. Those two, Tierney back to being full health. Partey's all of a sudden gotten a little bit steadier. When you're surrounded by guys that are always playing at a 7 or 8 level, and sometimes they're going above that with a 9 or a 10, it just makes the game easier for you, and you can concentrate on what you do best. And I really like what Arsenal's about right now. Heath, I got a trivia for you. You ready for this?
Yeah.
With his second goal today, Bukayo Saka is the second youngest Arsenal player to reach 10 Premier League goals for the club. Who was the first, or who was the youngest?
Nicholas Anelka.
God, man, you can't even pause for that. Wow. So Saka's.
Well,
20
I know
years.
you. That's a trick question because you just naturally want to say Thierry Henry on some level, but that's not the way it worked out. That's not the way it was.
Yeah, Saka 20 years, 112 days. Nicolas Anelka 19 years, 225 days to get 10 league goals. Saka, special player. Another question for you, Heath, and anybody else that's listening. Hit us up at Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter if you want to answer this later, and then obviously here live on YouTube. How many goals do you think Saka will end up with this year? Because he got 20 in him.
Oh man, 20 is a lot, man.
I know, but
20.
he's already at 10. We're not even halfway through the season.
I would say if he finishes on 17, 18, it's a phenomenal. I mean, I think he's on pace to have an unbelievably phenomenal year and score clutch goals. And by the way, he scores a wide range of goals as well, which I really like about him. Very opportunistic goals, just taking chances, being able to slot them to the back post, things like that, low and hard. Those are the kinds of goals that I like. The kinds of goals, by the way, that Sterling struggled to.
5 league goals right now.
So he's 10 goals total.
10 goals in all comps. Got it.
Yeah.
But you'd still take 10 in all.
It's
20. Sorry.
I would say 20. I would say 17 in all. I still think that there's still a value.
You know what? I read that trivia wrong, everybody. It's the second youngest Arsenal player to reach 10 Premier League goals for the club in general, not this season. So I'm sorry. He only has 5 Premier League goals. So how many goals do you think he'll end up with? Or what would you be happy with given what he does for the club? He's 19 games in.
I would say if he's in that 13 to 17 range across all competitions. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, it just requires a brace in a couple of matches that I think he's going to get those opportunities as well. You know, he clearly can show up against Norwich, and there's more Norwiches in the league. Newcastle might be one of them, Jimmy. Who knows along the way. But I think if he's in double digits, I think he's good. I think if he's in that kind of 15 to 17 range, he's great. And is probably knocking on the door for a brand new contract saying, hey, you know, Aubameyang did this for a couple of seasons. You guys wrote a big fat check for him. What are you guys going to give me now? And Aubameyang scored a lot more goals than that. But, and by the way, Des said that Martin Odegaard, our producer Des said Martin Odegaard really took his game to another level at Real Sociedad. And they were desperate to extend his loan, but Real Madrid weren't into the idea. So
yeah, that's right.
Just to give a little perspective as to you know where he's cut his teeth over the last few seasons. But let's move on to the other North London. Despite my attempt to eat up all the time with Arsenal, let's talk about Spurs versus Palace. Patrick Vieira, another one of the managers that's had to find themselves sidelined due to COVID, or at least a positive or whatever test. COVID, I can't speak on that. By the way, isn't it bizarre that in Major League Soccer they never mention the players' names, but in the Premier League the coaches just outright say who has COVID? Obviously, it's no secret when like your starters aren't on the team or aren't playing, but I think it's like some sort of HIPAA laws or something like that where you can't actually mention people by name. But in the Premier League, they're like, he has it, he has it, he has it. And maybe it's being more normalized now and it just helps with transparency as well. But not to get off topic, let's talk about Tottenham winning 3-0 versus Palace and get your initial thoughts on that. And we'll jump a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, really quick. Just got to give a shout out to Antonio Conte. Since he's taken over for Nuno Espirito Santo in the league here, he's got 4 wins and 2 draws, out of 6 games. And I thought today was a really impressive performance. And again, another North London team that's looking a little lively, right? They got that sense of belief and that when they go forward, they're going with this purpose where maybe they're committing another number or 2 that they weren't under Jose Mourinho or not under Espirito Santo. But there is something feeling a little bit different. And what was interesting is that when you watch Conte's teams, they do sit back behind the ball a little bit. But with regard to Palace, I think they did it on purpose to bait the center backs to, hey, you have a little bit more time than you think, baby. Why don't you take an extra touch? And then once they take that extra touch, it's a cue for the whole team. We're pressing that next pass as soon as possible. It's going to create some gaps. We're going to try to turn the ball around quickly and then kill him on the counter. And that's what they set up in the first goal. Obviously, Harry Kane looks like he's enjoying himself again. That's a big deal. And he scored a good goal today. I thought Lucas Moura was fantastic. There's something about Antonio Conte, man. He does a very good job of getting everybody on the same page. And then from there, building confidence within those parameters. And I can't say enough about
By the way, Jimmy, looking
while managing COVID, right? Which has been crazy.
Looking at this photo right now, is that not a foul to you?
That's a foul.
That's a foul, right?
100%.
He went over the. I mean, look, I've always, you learn it at a very young age that if you can get up before your opponent, you don't allow them to be able to get up and challenge for a ball. Usually, that's vertical, where you can get an elbow on somebody or get your arms up and wide so that they can't get up and challenge for the ball. You get up first, but that was one where he went over the back of him, and I was like, man, it just seems like there was going to be a review of this going over the top, but nobody even seemed to argue from
which is crazy. It was a foul because he got hit before he could even jump at the ball. And I was little Lucas Moura climbing the ladder to power head it at the back post. That one was a foul. That said, and we're not trying to dismiss anything about Spurs' performance here. They still deserve to win. Yeah. There was only really one team on the field that was trying to play. Palace, had some ideas. They were trying to make it difficult. Conor Gallagher, I thought, again, was pretty solid and proving his worth, but this was a day for Spurs. And this is one of those things where I don't know if we could say that consistently under Mourinho and Espirito Santo. They clearly were the best team, and they got the result to prove it. And when you look at they got Southampton next, and then in a couple of days, they got Watford after that on New Year's. Then they got Chelsea in leg one of the League Cup semifinal. And then they start the FA Cup. Then they have Chelsea again, and they play Arsenal at home in the league. And then they play Chelsea away. So it's getting a little sketchy here. So I'm kind of curious to see how Antonio Conte is going to balance and balance his team, rotate his squad, and how they can continue to stay fresh. This isn't isolated to him. Every team's got to go through it, but I'm curious to see how they perform. But I thought today was another good performance. The North London teams coming up, Heath Pearce.
By the way, can I just say that Crystal Palace are a team that early on, before Zaha was sent off, I was like, if I could go back, and somebody's like, you can't take, like the era's gone in the U.S. where you get to pick a Premier League team that's won something or whatever. I would go with Crystal Palace. I love the way Crystal Palace play. They had broken through a couple presses of Spurs early on, and I was like, wow, these guys really breaking through. That confidence to build up, to build through. Just the pace on their passes, just that confidence to hit the long switches, just a lot of things that were happening. Then you get into the attack and you're like, okay, this team is very good. Obviously, in the end, Zaha changed it. I think that there was just obviously you're up 2-0 now. You give up a red card. Game's pretty much over. I think they did a good job of frustrating him, getting him to bite on those types of moments. But basically, the three guys that you want scored goals, right? You got Harry Kane, Son, and Moura. And I think Lucas Moura's role continues to evolve for me in terms of being kind of having that clutch gene or that ability to create something for a team that's been sort of in the depths. My question for you is, Jimmy, and by the way, it's 2-0 to Brighton for anybody who isn't watching that Brighton match right now. My question for you is, when I think about Mourinho to Espirito Santo to now Conte, doesn't that feel a little bit like a plan? I mean, not like it was planned, but doesn't it feel like there's an evolution there? I mean, it's not like they threw the baby out with the bath, water. It's not like they just decided to become something different. They're still very defensive minded. They're still sitting deeper. I mean, yeah, they're pressing higher. They're actually best when they decide to step out higher with a little more purpose. But I mean, how do you decipher the differences between the three of them other than just sort of pep talks and managerial? I mean, they all seem to have the same foundation, unless I'm completely wrong.
Well, I think there might be a commitment to one style. And I think Antonio Conte has maybe simplified some of the asks because their back three, Tanganga, Dyer, Sanchez, that's the same back three that was, cue the circus music. When all of a sudden it's just something bad is going to happen. And in the last couple of weeks, I just feel like they've been a little bit more solid. And now they're becoming tough to lock down. I think that having Højbjerg and Oliver Skip has really emerged as someone they can trust, that can do a lot of things and hold the ball in tight spots, which I think is important. I really liked Emerson today. Him bombing forward, Reguilón on the other side, getting that balance right between your wing backs, I think is important, which maybe they didn't always have. They're starting to commit, I think, and be smarter about when they commit with their numbers. And then you have world-class players. There are world-class players on this team. Lloris is one in goal and can save games on his own. We've seen that plenty of times as a World Cup winner to prove it. Harry Kane, obviously, Heung-min's son. Lucas Moura has glimpses. We've seen it in a Champions League semifinal where he scored 2 goals out of nothing against Ajax. Like, he's got world-class ability. Now, can they extract that on a more consistent level? And we saw Antonio Conte do that with Inter Milan last season. He's gotten the best out of Romelu Lukaku. Achraf Hakimi was excellent. He brought along Nico Barella, Brozovic. I mean, all these players that play for Inter will probably say, hey, this guy helped my career. He helped me take another step. And that buy-in takes some time, but I think Conte's got his guys there, and I really appreciate what he's done. And you can see it in that little, and we talked about it with Arteta. The buy-in, it took a little bit longer with Arteta. Conte can come in and obviously has more of a managerial pedigree than Arteta, so it's going to take some time. But I like what he's done so far. However, to use another analogy, the proof's in the pudding, right? So he's got a lot of big games coming up, and when he goes up against Tuchel twice over a two-legged affair in the League Cup semifinals, when he has Arsenal at home on January 16th, circle that on your calendars. These are very, very big games, and these are going to probably determine how everybody feels about Antonio Conte, come the Champions League here, or not that they're in it. But and I think maybe getting knocked out of the Conference League is something else. But by the end of January, I think the dust will settle. We'll see kind of what Antonio Conte is made of and what his team is made of as well.
And I mean, Jimmy, before we jump to the West Ham Southampton game, which was also a fantastic game. By the way, just all of these games were fantastic, and it was one of those ones where I was like, oh, small sample size. There's less games to watch. And then I was like, as I was watching one, I had one on the laptop, on my phone. I had one on the TV, and I was like, oh, these are all the games I don't want to happen at the same time because there's goals like crazy, and I really want to be able to watch them and break them down because there's such implications for everyone from Arsenal to top four to Spurs on the form that they're in moving into 5, West Ham falling, their form falling, Chelsea trying to get back into a title race with Lukaku coming back on the field. So many great storylines to have happen all at once. For this, do you think that this Spurs side is here to stay? Do you think that they're seeing a good run of form, or are we seeing Spurs as we've known them in the past in terms of that confidence, that consistency, or are we just seeing sort of that new manager bounce?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there is some new manager bounce for sure. That was bound to happen. It always happens with every club. Some of it lasts longer than others, but I feel like Antonio Conte is such a professional and comes in with such a pedigree that it's hard to say that this won't be extended in some capacity. Now they got Southampton and Watford over the next 4 or 5 days, or the 28th is Southampton away, Watford away on New Year's. And then they're going to have a few days rest before they have that first Chelsea game. That'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think they're here to stay. I think that Antonio Conte knew what he had with his team. Now, though, we have to bring this up. There is a January transfer window that gets brought into the equation. Will Daniel Levy give him the funds to spend? And if so, who are they going to go get? Or who are they going to offload? Is Dele Alli still part of the plans? And Dembele? That's if they're going to get rid of those guys, then they're going to have to get something in return. They have to find somebody else to replace what those guys bring to the table. Whether they fit in with Conte's plan or not so sure. But there's still great depth. And Dele Alli I actually thought was pretty good against Liverpool, minus the finishing part. But he can be active as well. And I don't know, man. This Tottenham team, I wouldn't count them out for maybe sneaking into that last top 4 spot because West Ham seems like they're dropping off. Arsenal, I think, is going to be a competition.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
We're playing today. Arsenal play Spurs today. Who's winning that game? It's a great question by Des. He threw it into the run of show. Arsenal
what
play
a question.
Spurs.
I don't know if I should answer this alone. I need some help from everybody. So if you're listening to this, hit us up at Qué Golazo Pod. And if you're watching right now on YouTube, hit us up right now. Man, that is a great. Can I straddle the fence?
You want to sit on the fence? I know you want to go on the fence.
2-2 draw.
Yeah. I mean, it would be I mean, it's tough to say. If I could see Spurs winning that if Spurs are clinical. But even at the start of this match today, I looked at Spurs and I was like, man, they waste a lot of chances still. And they've wasted a lot of chances in the last couple of weeks. Granted, they're in great form right now and they're creating a ton of chances. And Harry Kane's finishing and getting that finishing touchback, which means less wasted chances. But even Son is wasting chances and he's their top scorer. What is he? He's like second or third in the league in terms of scoring. Or top 5 or something. I don't know. He's got something like 8 or 9 goals so far this season, maybe 7. But yeah, I think about that, and then I think about Arsenal probably controlling possession. It'd be a fantastic match, but I do think Spurs, if Spurs can, as you mentioned earlier, when you play a game, if you can score early, if Spurs can do that and be clinical, then I can see Spurs beating Arsenal right now.
What I find interesting, Spurs have only scored 21 goals in 16 games, and that's pretty low given what they have at their disposal from an attacking perspective. Arsenal, conversely, have scored 32 goals in 19
What's Harry
games.
Kane on? 2, 3, 3?
Harry Kane is on. Let me look right now. Harry Kane is on 3 goals in 15 games.
That's including today. Yeah.
Yeah. Heung-min-son's got 8. He's 6 overall in the league. Lucas Moura only 2 goals. Højbjerg 2 goals. Yeah, they need a little bit more, obviously, from him and some others to step up and start to score on a more regular basis. Takes a lot of pressure off on that defense, who we know can be pretty leaky at times. Lloris has been pretty solid, though, this season. I don't know. I like this team. I do think there might be a move in their future. I don't even know if Christian Romero really fits their team. I don't feel like he's been lights out since making his move from Atalanta, the Argentinian international. But I think if anybody can deal with how to get the most out of center backs or any players, really, Antonio Conte has really impressed me. I don't know if I was not a believer before, but the Lukaku experience for me has really changed my perspective. What he had Lukaku doing, the confidence that he had Lukaku playing with in Inter Milan was nothing short of extraordinary. And it's great to see that still continue. We saw a great example of it today from Lukaku. So I love when Lukaku just says, you know what? I'm going to put everybody on my shoulders. I'm going to drive the whole team forward and make it happen. And I want to give some credit to Conte because I think Lukaku said as much as well. So I'm curious to see how he can infect Harry Kane in a positive way, who I think was still feeling pretty sorry for himself for a little while after not making the move to Man City.
Well said, Jimmy. Well, here we are, 50 minutes into this show, and I thought we wouldn't have anything to talk about here.
Plenty to talk
today.
about.
West Ham lose 2-3 to Southampton. 2-3. Isn't that a weird thing to say?
No, that's like a 6-year-old explains the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
West Ham 2, Southampton 3. Southampton, again, they kind of went punch for punch for most of this match, and there was a point when Arsenal ran away and then Man City ran away where I was like, I'm going to put it on this match and see what's going on here. And it just seemed like there was still even an opportunity in the end, West Ham being able to squeak one out. Good to see Mikel Antonio scoring again, which is important. But West Ham continue to fall, continue this slump of form. I mean, what's your takeaways from this match?
I'm disappointed, frankly. I thought this West Ham, not that they didn't have the backbone. I mean, that gets kind of dramatic, but they have not been playing well and not making those plays, to your point.
Southampton haven't been playing well.
No, they haven't. They haven't.
I think like one win in their last 7 as well.
Which I'm not surprised. That Southampton team is a little bit, like you said before, like a Christmas tree with red and green all over the place. You know, a little good, little bad. But this West Ham team, I thought, had a little bit more, and the wheels are starting to fall off a little bit. Maybe it's because Mikel Antonio wasn't in the team, or even when he wasn't scoring. They have, one win in their last 8 in all competitions. Now, they lost to Man City. They drew with Brighton. They beat Chelsea 3-2. Then they lost to Dinamo Zagreb, which that game didn't really matter. They'd already won the group. They drew with Burnley, which I think is a big missed opportunity to gain some points. They lost to Arsenal. The game against Norwich got postponed. And I think that's important because if you ever want a slump buster and you want to get out of that slump, Norwich is your team. They lost to Tottenham in the League Cup quarterfinals. And that might benefit them if they really want to compete for the top 4. So they don't have to worry about these 2-legged affairs that Tottenham now and Chelsea have to play. But losing at home to Southampton when they fought back to get to 2-2, and it looked like the game was going to tip in their favor, and to give up a goal on a set piece, which we know is not about talent, it's all about concentration and focus and desire, it's got to be a little heartbreaking for David Moyes, because I felt like maybe that's where my disappointment is. That's what those guys were known for, is that desire, that they're going to do whatever it takes to win a game, and they gave up a goal where that is needed in spades, and they didn't make that play. And it seems like that's starting to trickle into their team a little bit. Now, are they tired? Maybe a little bit, but every team has that same type of excuse with injuries or COVID or whatever it is, and they're going to have to fight their way through it. Now, they have Watford away in a couple days. They have Crystal Palace away after that. They got Leeds twice, once in the FA Cup and then once in the league. And then they play Manchester United. So they have a schedule that they could be manageable, but I worry about this team a little bit because they just don't look as sharp as they have been in the past.
I like that, Jimmy. Well said. Well, before we wrap this up, Jimmy, obviously, as of right now, this Newcastle Man United game looks still on, and that it's going to happen. Do you have any? Does it have to? I mean, just in terms of your thoughts going into that one, you as a fan, you as an analyst, I mean, what do you expect from this game if it happens?
Well, the fact that Manchester United have had some time to rest leading into this, and had time under Ralph Rangnick to prepare for it, who obviously is a master preparer in terms of what his teams do and how they do it, that makes me a little bit nervous. Newcastle obviously could say, oh, well, we've had some time. but they don't have the talent to necessarily execute on whatever the game plan is. And that's the problem. And I feel like when you're, let's say, a Norwich or Newcastle or Burnley or whoever's in the relegation zone, you might have a game plan, but then once a team scores earlier, once a team punches you in the face, can you adapt? And do you have the talent in your team to adapt accordingly? And I'd like to think that a lot of these teams don't. I think the back line for Newcastle is very weak. I think they have some attacking players, but they can't expect to try to do it in ones and twos, right? You want to be able to attack consistently with numerical advantages. Manchester City probably do that the best out of any team in the league. And it just makes it hard. I'm going to see us in a 4-5-1. Callum Wilson's up top. You hope that Alonso Maximin can pull off something. But even if Newcastle scores 1, okay, great. But Manchester United is probably slated to score 3. So we're going to see a patented 4-2-2-2 from Ralph Rangnick. That's what he likes to do. Fred and McTominay will probably be the double pivot. You got Bruno, Jadon Sancho, Ronaldo, Rashford is what it's looking like are going to be the starting lineup. And I just don't think talent for talent that and obviously not having a clutch player in our team at Newcastle is going to be enough. I think Man United win this game. I'm sure Ronaldo will get 1 or 2. Last time they played at Old Trafford, he got 2? Wasn't that his debut? Played against Newcastle at Old Trafford. So yeah, that guy knows he's thirsty for goals, and it's been a while. So I think this is going to be pretty one-way traffic. There are moments where Newcastle have that like 15, 20 minutes where they look pretty good. And you're like, yeah, do that for 90 minutes, and they just can't. So I'm curious to see how long we can hold up the fort before Man United score. Once Man United scores 1 and we have to stretch ourselves, and I'm talking about us as a Newcastle fan, once we get stretched, it's over at that point. So I don't know. If Newcastle can score first, maybe there's some hope to get a draw, but I think this is Man United all the way. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I agree. It just, I try to go down the mindset of like, well, Man United, they've got these COVID cases. And so Ralph Rangnick's not getting the same exact squad that he wants out there. You're working through a lot of protocols, a lot of players coming back, a lot of health and fitness that you need to get them back into a certain level of shape. And that can be done for training, but you also got to monitor them and trying to come up with all these excuses as to would I rather play a depleted or a comeback team that's had a lot of time to train like a Manchester United, or would I rather play what circumstances would be the best time to play in Man United? It still seems always like this where they've lacked game time, they've lacked fitness, they've lacked cohesion. Maybe they've gotten that on the training pitch, but they're lacking that form and that ability to go and beat a team, especially this time of year where you play every 3-4 days and you can beat a team and you can get on a run and you're like, okay, this is the last team you're going to play if Man United is in form like that. So it seems like an opportunity. But again, when I look at the Newcastle squad, it's exactly that you mentioned, that I just don't see where the weapons are to be able to capitalize on the opportunity that's being presented to them.
Yeah, not for 90 minutes, right? Even at Old Trafford, I'm thinking about the game. It was 1-1 at one point, and Newcastle scored a great counter-attacking goal, and then United were reeling a little bit, but then Ronaldo scored that other one and unlocked it, and then Newcastle lost 4-1, as they do. What I find interesting is that from Newcastle's perspective, the schedule has been very unkind to them. Prior to this game, they've given up 11 goals.
Because they're in the Premier League, Jimmy. They're in the Premier League.
That's true.
There's
but
not a kind schedule.
That's fair. But they've given up 11 goals in their last 3 Premier League games. And they played against Leicester, Liverpool, and Manchester City. And then now they have Manchester United. I don't know who schedules it, but that's some BS, dude. I don't understand how that's even fair or remotely fair. I guess maybe they say, well, we gave you Norwich and Burnley and such after that. And okay. But it just hurts right now when you're walking this path and you have to take on all these top teams, especially a well-rested Manchester United, who, yes, they do have some injuries and some COVID concerns, but it's not enough to put them off. So this is going to be, if you're looking at this from a wagering perspective, do you just believe that Newcastle are going to score? If Newcastle score and both teams score and United win, I bet you get some pretty good action there. But it's just hard to know because the 2 league games under Ralph Rangnick have been 1-0 wins. And so it feels like he's really putting a big emphasis on locking things down defensively because they've been pretty leaky up until this point.
Well said. I like it. That is it from us, Jimmy. Thank you so much for the time. And for those of you watching or listening, follow Qué Golazo on Twitter at Qué Golazo Pod. Subscribe to Qué Golazo wherever you get your podcast and leave us a glowing review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel because we love doing this. We want to make sure that you guys can join in on the conversation and get these videos whenever we make them. And join Jimmy and I live on YouTube again on Monday for the USMNT Hour. We try to do this every single Monday. It's the inaugural annual award ceremony. We'll be looking at 12 transformative months for the Stars and Stripes. Wow. And that kicks off a weekend of year-end specials on the Qué Golazo feed. Man, that was a tough thing to read there. Fabrizio Romano will be on the review. We'll be on to review the best transfers of 2021. we'll celebrate the best of the European game with the second edition of the Qué Golazo Awards. And Fab will be back again with his 2022 predictions. So, from Des, myself, Jimmy Conrad, and myself, we appreciate, I just keep saying myself. Got to thank
we love you, Heath. Keep going. Keep going. Heath, you're crushing it.
Yes, we appreciate all of you guys, and we will see you very soon.
Later.